tBTC Whitepaper Notes by Crypto Networks Wiki. Overview. Notes and questions. In the white paper, the authors often use host chain to refer to the chain upon which tBTC will be minted and used. I think the authors do this because they're abstracting it for future chains. I've replaced host chain with Ethereum for now, just for concreteness and ease of understanding. Also, one of the things which really stood out to me in the white paper was beyond how exciting tBTC is for DeFi and all the things that it unlocks. It's really exciting to see NFTs actually being used as a structural element in a network's design, because collectibles are cool but not really a big deal yet, and deposit owner tokens in particular are going to be really valuable. So another note on naming is that lowercase t capitalized BTC is the name of the network, whereas capital T capitalized BTC is the name of the Bitcoin backed token on Ethereum. It's not so much an issue for an audio recording, but if you see the two elsewhere on the site and around, you'll know the difference. Prior work. A Bitcoin peg on Ethereum is desirable because it provides sidechain functionality and scalability extensions. Bitcoin moves relatively slowly, well, very slowly compared to Ethereum, and there are two main approaches which have been taken so far in creating a Bitcoin peg. There's been the centralized provable and redeemable route and the decentralized synthetic irredeemable route. We're going to go through the two of them now. So the centralized provable redeemable route, it's based on the federated peg model, where a multi-sig Bitcoin wallet locks up Bitcoins, another blockchain then issues tokens representing those Bitcoins, and then multi-sig signers validate a sidechain. There are concretely two main solutions today in place. One is Liquid, a sidechain developed by Blockstream, which is a network for settling payments between exchanges. Bitcoin gets locked up in 15 signer multi-sig wallets, a 15 signer multi-sig wallet made up of participants pre-vetted by Blockstream, and then the signers vote to sign blocks and to approve exits back to Bitcoin. The other solution is wBTC, which is a Bitcoin-backed ERC20 token, which uses a similar approach to Liquid, but it goes for the wrapped token approach, which follows a centralized consortium model. The consortium votes in wBTC to add or remove custodians of BTC reserves, and the custodians then operate a multi-sig Bitcoin wallet and control all the keys. They can move custodied Bitcoin and mint wBTC on Ethereum. So what are the trade-offs with this approach? Well, the benefits are that these approaches work. They are easy to audit. It's easy to audit their on-chain reserves, and they're operationally simple, so they're much less likely to fail. The issues with them are significant. They require too much trust, because custodians can block withdrawals, they can collude to steal reserves, and they can be forced to mess with reserves by outside players like governments and hackers. So that's the centralized provable redeemable approach. What about the decentralized synthetic irredeemable approach, which uses a decentralized synthetic asset? The popular Ethereum example which comes up is Maker's DAI stablecoin. DAI is synthetically pegged to the US dollar, Ether is locked in reserves, and arguably the design could easily be applied to create a Bitcoin synthetic. Again, what are the trade-offs? It's very flexible, which is a huge advantage, but synthetic Bitcoin doesn't need to follow Bitcoin's rules. For example, the synthetic could inflate the supply of Bitcoin, and obviously goes against Bitcoin's principles. There's also a risk in creating a synthetic pegged to a volatile asset backed by another volatile asset. It's just risk sitting on risk multiplying. I think it doesn't say in the white paper, but one of the things which is most interesting and most powerful about tBTC, which I've seen as I've gone through it, is precisely the respect that it gives to the principles of which underlie Bitcoin. Bitcoin is as much ethos driven as anything else, and in actual fact, arguably that's where an enormous amount of the value comes from at the moment. It's an objectified movement, and what tBTC does so well, and I think the reason I'm so excited about it, is precisely because it sticks so well to these underlying principles. We'll talk about them more in a second. So what are the design goals of tBTC? Well, tBTC's main goal is to create an ERC20 token which maintains Bitcoin's hard money status. tBTC needs to be, firstly, censorship resistant, needs to be inflation resistant, it needs to have minimal supply side value loss and be as efficient as possible, so you don't want supply siders making the system extremely expensive, as you do find in centralized custodian situations at the moment. It should be always redeemable. So 1 tBTC should be equal to 1 BTC. Depositing 1 BTC to tBTC, the tBTC system should remove that BTC from the circulating supply of Bitcoins. If you want to get your Bitcoins back, you should be able to do it immediately. Unlike stablecoins, there's no artificial price peg needed. There just needs to be a supply peg between Ethereum and Bitcoin. Developing Intuition, a simple single signer protocol. So the authors set forth a simple system as an example for consideration at the beginning. They mention 3 components. 1 is a signer who's an off-chain actor. 2 is a pegged Bitcoin contract, which is an ERC20 contract on Ethereum. And then there's the depositor, another off-chain actor. The deposit process looks like this. A depositor wants to create a tBTC ERC20 token so that they can use their BTC on Ethereum. Secondly, they ask the contract to take their 1 BTC. The contract waits for a signer to accept and return a new BTC address for the deposit to go into, and then they themselves deposit 150% collateral in Ether. The depositor then puts 1 BTC into the new BTC address, depositing it, and provides proof of this to the tBTC contract. The contract then creates 1 tBTC, 0.99 of which goes to the depositor, and 0.01 which goes to the signer as a fee. If the depositor wants to get their BTC back, they send their 1 tBTC to a contract with a BTC address. The signer then pays 1 BTC to that BTC address, subtracts the transaction fees, provides proof of payment to the contract. The contract burns 1 pBTC to equalize the BTC to pBTC backing, and then the contract enables the signer to withdraw their Ether collateral. It's an elegant design, but it skips over some major issues. For example, the Bitcoin proof of payment is extremely slow on the EVM, and it doesn't have any treatment of needing to have a reliable price feed. The biggest problem, though, is the very insecure custody model. So here's a breakdown. The single signer is a massive problem because if deposits become more valuable than their collateral, the signer can steal the deposits and make a profit. And also the single signer can easily be coerced, which fails on the goal of censorship resistance. There's also a problem in the fact that this design requires a single hot wallet. Therefore, there's one enormous pool of deposits, which becomes a huge target for hackers. On top of that, there's no failure localization, so a single fault can affect the entire network. Basically, it doesn't really cut it. So let's go over the proposed system architecture. A robust, and the subtitle of the section is Designing a Robust Multi-Wallet, Multi-Signer Protocol. The authors say that the protocol must be based on a multi-wallet design. It must have many signers based around different locations in the world, and it should have no single points of failure. It should also improve on the following faults highlighted in the just a moment ago. It should introduce multi-signer payments. It should improve the bonding system. It should detect and handle signers who don't hold enough collateral. It should have a Bitcoin proof system, and it should have a solid way to handle failures on both the Bitcoin and Ethereum sides. The tBTC team is depending on there being available a well-distributed work token for selecting signers, a random beacon for selecting signers, an efficient protocol for generating keys, and an efficient multi-party threshold ECDSA protocol on the SEC P256K1 curve. And they mentioned that all of those will be provided by the Keep protocol. So next we're going to go through the system components. I'll give you a list of them here, and then we'll go through each of them one by one. So the system is made up of the following components: deposits and signer selection, bonding and price feeds, minting, custodial fees, signing, wallet failure, and redemption. So deposits. Here's an overview of how the deposits work. So in general, tBTC enables folks to create tBTC on a chain which is not hosted by Bitcoin with an absolute one-to-one pegging. Notice here that the authors are talking about the system in more abstract terms. The chain I mentioned, which is not hosted by Bitcoin, is I think they're referring to Ethereum there. So to give an overview of the tBTC creation process, in essence, folks ask the tBTC system to give them a BTC address to deposit in. The tBTC system selects a bunch of signers. Signers generate the signer group generates a private public key pair and broadcast it to the system. Folks then deposit their hard-earned BTCs to the wallet, thus becoming depositors. The deposited BTC is then split into two parts. One part can be used to create a one-to-one backed tBTC, and one part can be used to pay signers for their work. Let's talk a little bit about the deposit request. So the deposit request is the starting point for somebody wanting to move their Bitcoin into tBTC. The request is a transaction to the Ethereum smart contract and signals that the sender needs a wallet address from the signing group because they want to make a deposit. Something to note here is that there's a cost to creating signing groups. I'm not 100% sure yet if that's in Ethereum gas costs or to do with the Keep work token. That's something I need to clarify. But But the implication is that the deposit request needs to include a small fee in Ethereum, in Ether, and this is refunded once the successful deposit is made. So how are signers selected? After the deposit request, the tBTC system protocol requests a random seed from a secure decentralized beacon provided by Keep. The random seed is used to randomly select signers from a pool. We'll talk about this more in a second when we talk about signer bonding. And signers create a public ECDSA key together for the group. This public key is used to create a wallet address, which is published on Ethereum. So in terms of randomly selecting signers from a pool, before the signing group actually creates the public ECDSA key together, they have to stake a bond in Ether. Signers can lose their bond in a number of different situations. Broadly speaking, if they sign an unauthorized piece of data, which we'll talk about more later, the distributed key generation fails. So let's talk a little bit more about making a deposit. So the process of making a deposit looks like this. The tBTC protocol now has a wallet address for this deposit request. The depositor sends BTC from their own wallet to the signing group's BTC wallet address, and then Bitcoin confirms the transaction, and the depositor issues the transaction to Ethereum, proving the deposit has been made. You should note here that the tBTC protocol is the only link between Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it's made up of a set of smart contracts on Ethereum. So tBTC really needs to know that the network really needs to know that Bitcoin has been successfully deposited before tBTC lets the depositor act as though they've made a deposit. It's an important sequence of events. So the tBTC accepts once the tBTC network has accepted the proof that the depositor has made their deposit, the depositor then receives their bond back, which we talked about earlier, for the cost of creating the signing group. If no deposit proof is received by tBTC after the deposit request within a given period, the signing group is disbanded. tBTC takes the deposit bond and then makes it available to, I'm not sure if it's all of the signers in the network or just the signing group that was involved in that deposit. The next thing to talk about is light relays. So obviously the depositor has to prove that they've made the deposit, and to do so they send evidence that their deposit has been accepted on Bitcoin. And the mechanism by which this is done is through a simple payment verification and an SPV on Ethereum. The tBTC team has developed a new type of SPV called light relays, which use stateless SPV proofs. So stateless SPV proofs pass on enough information to give each proof some recency guarantee. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what a recency guarantee is yet. I need to look into that a little bit more. But this is done by using Bitcoin's difficulty adjustment largely, which means that the proof only stores some headers about difficulty adjustment, not every block header. The next thing to talk about is lots. So deposits are managed in fixed size lots, and lot size is an adjustable system parameter. Not exactly clear yet how that system parameter is adjusted. There isn't actually anything in the white paper about governance. Maybe that's something that they feel that is worth introducing only once the system is operational and valuable. But anyway, lot size is an adjustable parameter, and presumably managed in a centralized way at the beginning. And each deposit must be worth 1 BTC. It can't be less. We'll talk about that in a second. I mean, because I would imagine a lot of people might think immediately, can I put in less than 1 BTC? Can I put in fractions of a BTC? And the answer is you can't put in less, but you can put in more, but you can put in, for example, 1.2, but you ought not to. We'll talk about that more in a second. So if you want to add multiple lots, you can do so, but you have to create multiple deposits. And the reason for this is that it would create more signing groups and increase system resilience. So rather than just having one, rather than say putting 5 Bitcoins in and having a signing group of, I can't remember what the exact number is. I think it might be 80 signers. Then you have you have 5 different deposits, 5 different signing groups, and therefore 5 times 80 signers, which is much more resilient. So what happens if you make a mistake when you're making a deposit? Basically, the protocol can't handle the case where either too much or too little Bitcoin is deposited. So depositors really need to send exactly the right amount, or they could lose their monies. The underpayment situation, where the depositor pays too little, would lead to overbonded signers, which admittedly I don't have a great intuition for yet, but that's what it says in the white paper, and I believe it. So as a depositor, if you send less than 1 BTC to the system, you don't get any tBTC. You lose your funds to the signers, which is frankly terrifying, but I'm imagining a lot of that will be handled in the UI. And then what about overpayment? So the system does accept an overpayment, but only creates tBTC in accordance with the lot size. That is, if you send 1.2 Bitcoin, then tBTC will only create 1 tBTC, and the remaining 0.2 Bitcoins are vulnerable. Another tBTC holder could burn their tBTC to claim the initial 1.2 Bitcoins. So if you notice you've been overpaid, if you've noticed you've overpaid, which probably won't happen because you're likely to be using a UI which standardizes everything, or at least I will be, what you should do is you should quickly try to burn and reclaim your Bitcoin. One thing I don't understand about here, and maybe is something that I'd like to clarify with the tBTC team, is that later on in the white paper it says that a depositor gets a deposit owner token, which enables only them to redeem that specific BTC, or at least whoever's holding the deposit owner token. So I don't know about this. It feels like an inconsistency, and maybe it's because the NFT mechanism was added later. But yeah, I'm kind of looking to clarify that. So there's another case where a depositor might make a mistake, which is in sending multiple UTXOs. So to keep the protocol simple, it only accepts the first UTXO sent as a deposit to the signing group. If you send more UTXOs, you lose the funds held in any UTXOs except the first. So you don't do that. So yeah, obviously don't do that. I again am imagining for a lot of users this will be addressed in the UI, but if you're doing it more manually, then it's something to be very aware of. The next piece to talk about is the deposit economics. So obviously signers are paid for their work. They're the main, if not, they're the main supply siders on the network, apart from the core team. They are so they're paid for the work, and that requires that the signer fees are guaranteed by minting. That is, that when a signer mints a tBTC, they are immediately rewarded. signers also need to have a timeline on when the deposits will expire for, I think, planning purposes and also understanding when they're going to get paid. So what are the terms of a deposit? A deposit lasts for 6 months. Again, I'm not sure if this is a system, if this is a parameter or this is hard-coded and not going to change. That's something I'd quite like to clarify. So this stability of deposit length enables depositors to budget, one, for fees, and also enables them to know how long their Ether bond is going to be locked up for. So depositors might not want to retain access to their deposited BTC, which is something we're going to talk about quite a bit later, and so they can choose to get an NFT when the deposit is made, which can then be transferred to somebody else, and the initial depositor automatically will get their initial deposit fee back when the deposit is redeemed. I covered that very quickly just now, but that's something we'll talk about a lot more later on. So that's the gist of deposits. Next, we'll talk about bonding. Okay, so bonding. Bonds prevent signers from working together to stop depositors getting their funds back and from stealing the funds. Each deposit requires a bond from each signer. The collateral used in the bond must be an asset that is, 1, very liquid, and 2, has a large market cap. This is important because it increases the security of the whole system. If the signers work together to take the funds, bonds allow depositors to get their money back. So what are the different types of acceptable collateral? tBTC itself and Keep would be good, but neither will work at launch of the protocol because they're both too illiquid and they're both too small market cap. So Ether for now is the next best option. Okay, so measuring security. How does tBTC measure the degree of security in place? For security, bonds must be proportional to the size of the deposit. Signers need to have more to lose by cheating than to gain. And this is made more complicated by... I didn't finish that sentence in my notes, so I don't know what it's made more complicated by. But anyway, moving on to an example of this. So if there's a 1 BTC deposit, there will be, because that's the lot size, at least at first, and is backed by a 3 of 5 group of signers, i.e. 3 out of 5 signers in the group are required to sign the transactions. 3 signers at minimum could steal the deposit, which would give them each 1/3 of a Bitcoin. So, because that's what they're responsible for. So all 5 signers need to deposit an equivalent of 1/3 of a Bitcoin each in Ether. This way, signers can never conspire to leave with more than they've got at stake. How does pricing currency fluctuations come into play? So obviously the BTC to ETH price fluctuation is huge, and this is a problem for the system. If ETH drops in price compared to BTC, then bonds. So the system treats the case where ETH drops in price compared to BTC by ensuring that bonds are over-collateralized at 150%. If signers fall below that, they enter first pre-liquidation, then liquidation, unless they top up their ETH collateral. That's what I've got in the notes here, but later on we'll talk more about pre-liquidation and liquidation, and I'm revealing that I haven't fully understood this yet, because later on it kind of seems like that signers can't top up their ETH collateral, but here in my notes it says that they can. So anyway, we'll take a I think that's something to clarify. If Bitcoin drops in price in comparison to ETH, on the other hand, the main issue is that signers get lower fees for custodying the BTC, and it becomes a supply-side incentive issue. And this is because fees are denominated in Bitcoin. So the rational move for signers is to reclaim excess Ethereum liquidity, put it to use, and rebond it for more deposits. I guess they could rebond it for more deposits, or they could do whatever they want with it, which they think would be more profitable. So here's I think there is a better a longer treatment of the price feed later on, but just to touch on it now, tBTC, the tBTC protocol won't try to stabilize the price of the tBTC token. The market will do that. The tBTC protocol only tries to maintain the tBTC token supply at slightly lower quantities than the backing BTC pools, which should be less because tBTC is equal to BTC minus the signer fees. So the protocol only needs to understand the relationship between BTC and ETH, and they can therefore use a simple price feed. As mentioned, we'll go into that later. So let's talk about, I mentioned earlier the case where the signers become under-collateralized. Let's talk about that a little bit. So the first thing which happens is that the signers go into a state of pre-liquidation at 125% collateralization. At this point, the signers have to close the deposit before 6 hours have passed since they went into pre-liquidation, and before it hits 110%. So basically, the signer hits 125%, and they have 6 hours from the pre-liquidation, from that point, in order to close their deposit, or they have to do it before it hits 110%, or they go into liquidation. So this is where the confusion comes in for me, because I don't understand if it sounds like they have to close their positions, they have to close the deposit, they cannot top up their ETH. That's what I'm understanding. So what does liquidation look like? Forced liquidation is unlikely, because self-interested signers are going to redeem their deposits before they hit liquidation. But forced liquidation must still be present in order to dissuade dishonest signer behavior. It's not just liquidation threshold issues that mentioned above, but also they can become liquidated if signers don't give valid signatures when someone tries to redeem Bitcoin, or if the signers give a false signature. So it's not just under collateralization where liquidation can happen, it's also fraudulent behavior. So liquidation itself aims to keep the ratio of BTC to tBTC intact, and it does so by liquidating the signer's bonds, as well as liquidating liquidating the signer's bonds. So what does the process of liquidation actually look like itself? Signers are marked to be liquidated based on the criteria I mentioned above. tBTC then seizes their bonds, tries to sell them for tBTC in order to burn it. First, they try to use on-chain liquidity reserves like Uniswap, and if those reserves are not enough, the protocol starts an auction, a falling price auction. The falling price auction starts with buyers being able to buy 80% of the outstanding tBTC amount, and then the amount which they can buy increases until somebody either buys it or it reaches 100%, and then somebody buys it. So basically until somebody buys it. So but the point there is that it stays at 100% until somebody buys the tBTC. After that point, if all the tBTC which is returned from this process, all the tBTC which is returned from the process is burned, which helps maintain the supply peg, and then if any is left over, the account which triggered the liquidation also gets a small fee. If any more is left and the liquidation happened because of under collateralization, the signer group gets a cut. I guess I'm not entirely clear on which signer group that is, because I'm not sure why you would give money to the under collateralized signer group who messed up. But maybe it's the signer group at large. Maybe it's just the signer pool of all signers. Something to clarify. And then if it wasn't liquidated because of under collateralization, but it was because of fraud, then the tBTC is burned. Okay, so let's talk about the price feed. Price feed will initially be governed by a trusted single actor. How it works is that a price expires after 6 hours. I'm still not entirely sure how that works. Like, when is it actually updated? Is it required to be updated every 6 hours? Can it be updated less than that? Not exactly sure. I need to clarify that. From what I understand, if it isn't updated after that 6 hour point, everything requiring price, so every process which requires price will be blocked, which I think is basically everything and shuts down a lot of the system. So another thing to note is that the price feed only updates if it is different by more than 1% in comparison to the last price, and the rationale for this is that it saves on computation. In terms of future design, the authors note that the price feed will later be governed by the tBTC ecosystem. They imagine the first upgrades will use something like the MakerDAO's medianizer, which uses multiple price feeds which are voted in by a governing body and then uses the median price of those feeds. The authors are also considering using decentralized exchanges and liquidity pools like Uniswap as price sensors. The next system component is minting. It's different to the process of depositing Bitcoin and is split into two phases. In the first phase, a simple payment verification proof is generated, which leads to the creation of a non-fungible token. The second phase is where another proof is generated, which lets people trade the non-fungible token for tBTC. This splitting into two phases balances security with better UX and flexibility for end users. So let's talk about minting the deposit owner NFT. So after the deposit is made, the depositor can submit proof of their funding transaction. The depositor gets a non-fungible token called the depositor owner token. The deposit owner token is tied to the UTXO of the initial deposit, and it enables the holder exclusive rights to redeem that deposit. The implications of this are that it localizes attacks, because attacking one deposit will only affect that deposit and not others. It also means that different deposit owner tokens will have different levels of risk associated with them based on the underlying signer group, the underlying UTXO, etc. And the authors also mention one of the implications of this NFT is that these deposit owner tokens are really a good candidate for financial privacy innovations on Ethereum. So how is fungible tBTC minted on the tBTC protocol? Once the deposit has accumulated enough work on the Bitcoin network, it can then be traded for tBTC. So this process is called the vending machine and is facilitated by a smart contract on Ethereum. Any valid deposit owner token can be exchanged to create tBTC, and validity is determined by the amount of work accumulated on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's not just work accumulated on the Bitcoin blockchain. The work is made up of the Bitcoin's current difficulty rating and the volume of deposit tokens being exchanged. Once you've got an NFT as a depositor or somebody just acquiring deposit owner tokens, you don't immediately need to mint tBTC. You can just hang onto that token. The holder of the NFT can exchange it for one new tBTC minus 0.005 tBTC signing fees. I guess that 0.005 tBTC is a function of the lot size and not a system parameter itself, but I'm curious about that. If the original depositor transfers their deposit owner token to someone else, then they also get another NFT, which is called a beneficiary token. So the benefit of this is that when the deposit is redeemed, it gives the person who holds the beneficiary NFT a signing fee rebate, an additional 0.001 tBTC to be paid by whoever redeems it. If the original NFT holder retains the deposit owner token, then they lose the right to the signing fee rebate. The mechanism above increases liquidity of deposit owner tokens, basically, and the benefits to tBTC of that are that there's less risk to signers and there's less friction for tBTC redeemers. Redeemers can obtain deposit owner tokens from the vending machine. Each one obviously costs 1 tBTC, and when the vending machine receives that tBTC, it burns it. The next system component is minting. It's different to the process of depositing Bitcoin and is split into two phases. In the first phase, a simple payment verification proof is generated, which leads to the creation of a non-fungible token. The second phase is where another proof is generated, which lets people trade the non-fungible token for tBTC. This splitting into two phases balances security with better UX and flexibility for end users. So let's talk about minting the deposit owner NFT. So after the deposit is made, the depositor can submit proof of their funding transaction. The depositor gets a non-fungible token called the depositor owner token. The deposit owner token is tied to the UTXO of the initial deposit, and it enables the holder exclusive rights to redeem that deposit. The implications of this are that it localizes attacks, because attacking one deposit will only affect that deposit and not others. It also means that different deposit owner tokens will have different levels of risk associated with them based on the underlying signer group, the underlying UTXO, etc. And the authors also mention one of the implications of this NFT is that these deposit owner tokens are really a good candidate for financial privacy innovations on Ethereum. So So how is fungible tBTC minted on the tBTC protocol? Once the deposit has accumulated enough work on the Bitcoin network, it can then be traded for tBTC. So this process is called the vending machine and is facilitated by a smart contract on Ethereum. Any valid deposit owner token can be exchanged to create tBTC, and validity is determined by the amount of work accumulated on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's not just work accumulated on the Bitcoin blockchain. The work is made up of the Bitcoin's current difficulty rating and the volume of deposit tokens being exchanged. Once you've got an NFT as a depositor or somebody just acquiring deposit owner tokens, you don't immediately need to mint tBTC. You can just hang on onto that token. The holder of the NFT can exchange it for one new tBTC minus 0.005 tBTC signing fees. I guess that 0.005 tBTC is a function of the lot size and not a system parameter itself, but yeah, I'm curious about that. If the original depositor transfers their deposit owner token to someone else, then they also get another NFT, which is called a beneficiary token. So the benefit of this is that when the deposit is redeemed, it gives the person who holds the beneficiary NFT a signing fee rebate, an additional 0.001 tBTC to be paid by whoever redeems it. If the original NFT holder retains the deposit owner token, then they lose the right to the signing fee rebate. The mechanism above increases liquidity of deposit owner tokens, basically, and the benefits to tBTC of that are that there's less risk to signers and there's less friction for tBTC redeemers. Redeemers can obtain deposit owner tokens from the vending machine. Each one obviously costs 1 tBTC, and when the vending machine receives that tBTC, it burns it. Talk about signing. So the system required M of N multi-signature protecting each deposit. The maximum size of a signing group is 80, which is due to Bitcoin's consensus rules, and large multi-signature wallets are expensive on Bitcoin and Ethereum, so the authors plan to replace them using aggregate signatures, which can replace them with simple single signature verification. Improved fault attribution. Without any special treatment, the entire group of signers would be punished even if only some of them were caught misbehaving. That is, if the signing group is made up of 5, but 3 were caught doing something bad, all 5 would lose their bond, which is what the authors call a griefing vector as opposed to an attack vector. So tBTC uses accountable subgroup multi-signatures to overcome this. In the future, tBTC may implement either MUSIG and or BLS as a way to improve their signature schemes. How does the system handle failure? So section on aborts and liveness. System critical actions like depositing and redeeming must happen within a fixed period of time. If they don't complete, they're considered an abort. Aborts, it's worth noting, are punished less severely than fraud. Fraud itself, there are 2 fraud cases which the authors recognize. One is in the ECDSA side. So the signing group produces signatures on a message, for example, that the system didn't request. Then on the simple payment verification side, if a UTXO moves for a reason that the system doesn't understand, then this is also considered fraud. Redemption. So here's an overview of the redemption process. Basically, deposits represent real Bitcoin UTXOs. Anybody who holds a deposit owner token can request redemption. Once requested, the owner must relinquish the deposit owner token, pay outstanding signer fees, and at this point the process can't be cancelled. The signers have to produce a valid Bitcoin signature, which sends the deposited BTC to the requested address and enables Bitcoin actors to create a transaction to redeem the deposited Bitcoin. So let's talk a little bit about redemption requests. Only the holder of the deposit owner token can request redemption. The redemption request includes a fee amount, the redeemer's BTC address, the size of the deposit along with fees, and when tBTC receives the request, it then burns tBTC equal to the deposit size, gives signers their fees and bonds, and notifies signers that they need to put together a signature. The repayment amount is equal to the deposit size plus the custodial fee of 0.005 tBTC and a payment of 0.0005 tBTC to the deposit beneficiary. We talked about the beneficiary token earlier. So I've slightly skimmed over the rest of the white paper up until the appendix just to get this out there. But you can, I'll go through the remaining points now, and you're welcome to dig into them more deeply and to let me know if you're interested in diving into them more deeply. But here's my section on the remaining notes on redemption. So the format of the redemption request on Ethereum is simple and canonical. Once a redemption transaction is completed, it's proved by a redemption proof, which is an SPV proof, and is expected within 12 hours of the redemption request being submitted. After the proof is confirmed, the signers have to produce a signature on the redemption transaction, which they have 3 hours to do. The tBTC protocol has a mechanism by which signers can increment fees every 4 hours to align with the Bitcoin fee adjustment. Thanks for listening to this white paper walkthrough. You can subscribe to hear more of these, and you can also email us at hello@rebase.foundation. If you're looking to browse more crypto networks, you can do so on the website at rebase.foundation. You can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you around.